Hey, family, we are so excited to bring this second season of Theology in 30 to the Hope TV. Just a little history for those of you who are watching with us for the first time. Theology in 30 was birthed in 2018, and I hosted a few episodes on Facebook and Instagram. So I have to thank my pastor and our executive director, Dr. E. Dewey Smith, for this opportunity to bring Theology in 30 back for a second season. I need y'all to put some love in the comments for my pastor. And the purpose of Theology in 30 was basically to engage in theological discourse with my friends, with my colleagues, pastors, family, and people who are just curious about theology. So let me say this: you don't have to be a theologian or a preacher to watch and enjoy Theology in 30. Um, Also, I want to thank our supporters for rocking with us. You rocked with us for a full year and now into our second year, and we appreciate it. Your support matters and means so much to us. So, y'all know what I need you to do. Y'all know how we roll on Theology in 30. I need you to let me know in the comments where you're watching from so that we can greet you and so that we can interact with you. Also, feel free to leave some questions and we will answer them, yes, live. While you are watching, we will have someone who is present. It'll either be myself or to be our guest for tonight, or both of us. We'll be able to answer any questions that you have for us live. Finally, we want to grow our viewership, so we need your help. We need you to do two things. First, follow us on Instagram at The Hope TV. Again, Instagram at The Hope TV. And then second, we'd like you to share a link of this episode from our page to yours. Yes, because we know you have friends. We know you have people in your network who are curious about theology too. And so please, we want you to share this video on your social media platforms so that others can enjoy this amazing content. Thank you so much. So, Theology in 30 audience, y'all know this. I love preaching, more specifically, Black preaching. That's why I'm devoting the next 2 years of my life to writing about folk preaching, looking specifically at the history of folk preaching. And what I love the most about Black preaching is that there's more than one way to do it, right? There's more than one way to do it and do it well and effectively. And so one genre of Black preaching we see embodied in the rhetoric and the preaching of Howard W. Thurman is what our guest today calls university preaching. It's another powerful and effective way to communicate the gospel message. And so, our guest for today, listen, we never disappoint with our guests and our content on Theology in 30. And so, our guest for today is Justin West. He's going to talk to us all about university preaching. He is a colleague and a brother to me. He's in the first cohort of the world's only program for sacred rhetoric and Black preaching. And he's also the executive director of the Wackerlin Center for Faith and Action at Aurora University in Aurora, Illinois. He is an ordained itinerant elder in the AME Church and a lecturer on the religious thought of Howard Thurman. So you already know he's going to share so much helpful history and information with us about Howard Thurman's method in preaching. Justin is an MDiv graduate of Fuller Theological Seminary, where he concentrated in African American church studies, and he was awarded the Parish Fellowship for his commitment to preaching excellence. As a PhD candidate, as I shared, in the world's only program for African American rhetoric at Christian Theological Seminary. He is completing his dissertation on university preaching, specifically the university preaching of Howard Thurman at Boston University, where Thurman served as the university's first African American dean of chapel. Justin's wider research interests include sacred university rhetoric, African American rhetorical traditions, and the preaching of Howard Thurman. As a practitioner, Justin is interested in the meaning of African American preaching traditions for pastoral ministry in collegiate spaces, and just a little information about who he is at home. He is married to the lovely Mrs. Robin West, and he has 5 beautiful children, 3 boys and 2 girls. Theology in 30 family, join me in welcoming our guest for today, Justin West. Say hello to everyone, Justin.
Hello, everyone who is viewing today. It is so good to be with you. I am so grateful for this opportunity. Pastor Carner, I thank you for the warm invitation. I am excited for our conversation.
As am I. Listen, you come with so many accomplishments and so much scholarship. So I want to be very conscientious of your time for today's episode. So we're going to jump right in. As an accomplished scholar, professor, budding theologian, what do you love most about your practice?
So I love the journey with the people. I love to not only listen to God's voice as it speaks to me and through me to the congregation, but to also have a reciprocal stream where I am hearing the voice of God as it comes through the congregation back to me. So I love
Yes.
that exchange as we come together in the moment of worship to listen to the voice of the Spirit.
Absolutely. And you and I both took, I think, Dr. Andre Johnson and also Dr. Frank A. Thomas, right? We've
We
had
did.
classes with both of them.
Yes.
And you know very well that in their understanding of what makes Black preaching so special, what makes Black preaching so unique, is that they believe that Black preaching is inherently theological and rhetorical. So I
Yes.
want to ask you, because I've heard you preach and you do master this art of university preaching, right? But you also incorporate at times, I've heard you, some of the tropes that are familiar to us who are in the Black church, who serve, work, and preach in the Black church. So I want to ask you, is there a theological claim that you see coming back again and again in your preaching? What is your theology of preaching?
So my theology of preaching, if I could put it very concisely, is I believe that Scripture casts a hopeful vision for humanity and for the world. I believe that
Mm.
God calls us to be in harmony with one another. That comes about through love, which can look various ways in various contexts. So I think that Scripture calls us to journey back into this divine community where we are at peace with God and with one another, at peace with the natural world, and finding joy in all of it. So if I had to pick a section of Scripture that I go to, it's the Gospels. It's Jesus journeying with his disciples, and what I see as Jesus giving instruction and emulating what this beloved community could be like or even should be like. So I tend to go to the model that Jesus sets for his disciples and for those who are gathered around listening to his sermons and his teachings.
One thing that I noticed about how you described your theology of preaching is this horizontal element. That when we talk about being in relationship with God, we are also talking about being in relationship, right relationship, harmonious relationship with others. You already know what I'm going to say. That is so Migliore to me. When Migliore talks about the Trinity itself, theologically, as a communion of divine self-giving love. And so if the Trinity can get along with itself, if God can get along with God's self, then of course we should strive to get along with one another. I think that that's a powerful notion.
This is the story of a boy who is very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help. And slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Do you not understand? That is the very reason why you don't need to say to a person that I love you. If you say I love you, you're saying that you're going to get all 12 of these from me. You're going to get me not being envious. You're going to get me not having an active record and recollection. You're going to get my patience. You're going to get my kindness. You're going to get me bearing and enduring all. And if you can't give that to a person, don't say that you love them. Say I like you a lot. Say I have a strong affinity for you. Say I'm feeling you. I'm digging you. But don't you dare say you love them if you're not prepared to do these 12.
So I want to move us a little bit farther in our conversation because I do want to save time for us to get to Howard Thurman. So let me ask this. Because you did have Dr. Andre Johnson and you did have Dr. Frank Thomas, you are familiar with the whole idea of the rhetorical situation. Lloyd Bitzer in contemporary rhetoric, I think it's Porvecchio and Condit. It's all coming back, right? Lord Bitzer talked about this whole idea that there's a rhetorical situation. And for those to our listeners who are not familiar, I'm dabbling a little bit right now in rhetorical theory as I ask this question. The rhetorical situation is the context. It's whatever's happening around the sermon, whatever's happening around the speech of the rhetor being the speaker, right? Whatever's happening in that context to precipitate this message. That's what we call the rhetorical situation. So I want to ask you, what is the rhetorical situation for Howard Thurman's university preaching that you are spending, 5-6 years studying? What is the rhetorical situation that Howard Thurman is preaching in? Because when we hear the preaching of Howard Thurman, we can tell he's very much so in touch with the environment, with what's happening around him, what's happening in the culture, what's happening in society. So talk to us. Tell us about the rhetorical situation of Howard Washington Thurman.
So I'm going to add a little bit to what you said, because Bitzer does present the rhetorical situation. I actually would contend there are multiple rhetorical situations that are happening within any given homiletical context. But it is the preacher who makes a choice as to which rhetorical situation she or he will address when they perform their sermon. So I'm going to just rephrase the question as what is the rhetorical situation that Howard Washington Thurman chooses when he enters the context of university preaching, specifically at Boston University. We're talking 1953 to 1962, relatively. Of course, there were a lot of things happening in the world, within the U.S. at that time. If I had to sum it up, though, there's war. There is just all sorts of division along racial, ethnic lines, or along socioeconomic lines. There's so many divisions and just situations globally that are causing separation among people, that are causing misunderstandings among people. And so I think that what Howard Thurman chooses as a rhetorical situation over and over is this theme of common ground. He's trying to find unity among humanity and trying to bring people closer together. It's trying to bring people in community with one another. And so I think that is the rhetorical situation that he chooses, and that's what he tries to accomplish in his preaching. And he does that in various ways by various themes that he chooses. So he may choose to preach on peace as opposed to war. He may choose 1 Corinthians 12 and have a conversation about love. But there are different themes that he chooses within this overarching situation of how do I bring people together? How do I build bridges so that people can see their common shared humanity in their common ground in God?
I love it. So you and I have had a lot of conversations about our homiletical theology, our homiletical method, our homiletical theory. Like we can keep going. You and I have those conversations. And as you describe the preaching of Howard Thurman and his rhetorical situation, you do realize you've answered two questions in one. You've answered what is the rhetorical situation, but you've also talked a little bit about Thurman's method. So I think we've done a good job with that. And I want to shift us to you a little bit. In light of our conversations we've had, you're one of the few people that I've talked to who shared that your PhD journey led you to discovering your own preaching method and your own theology of preaching. Like, as you described your theology of preaching, I just heard some of the comments you shared that this has been a journey to finding that. And so what advice do you have for new preachers, new teachers, new ministers who may be watching and saying, I don't know what my theology of preaching is, and I don't know how to find it. You know, what advice do you have for them on how to find that, how to discover their theology of preaching, how to mine their own history of preaching and their own work to see what is my theology of preaching? What advice do you have?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Pastor Carner. I appreciate it. In regards to finding my own preaching voice, what has been immensely helpful for me is being surrounded by elders and peers who affirm my uniqueness, my peculiarity, that don't say that I have to fit into a certain box as a preacher or as a Black preacher, that have made space and room for me in their pulpits to experiment, right, to make mistakes, and to give me graceful comments about things, ways that I can, strengths that I should tap into, but also areas that I might want to consider revising. So I think of my pastor, Jesse Hawkins. I think of my professors who I've had, who have just made space for me in the classroom to discover my voice. And I do think the more that you preach and the more that you're exposed to life all around you, broad experiences, diverse experiences, that shapes your theology, or at least that shaped my theology. Brushing up against people that I didn't think I would ever, brush up against, that caused me to rethink, am I reading scripture rightly? How I need to relook at that passage and reinterpret that passage, and then preach about it in a different way. So yes, that's what I might offer to students listening. Be discerning about who you let into your circle, and listen to those who make space and room for you to discover your voice.
We're talking about healthy aging and healthy living.
I'm so passionate about feeding your skin the truth. And the truth is with fruits, vegetables, and all type of herbs. And that's really my motto, is feed your skin the truth.
You're home before sunrise, on top of the house, the kids, and our future. The smell of your cooking is our alarm clock. My Shiro's day is never done. So let's start saving a little more now, so we can feel prepared for retirement. A free 3-minute online chat can give us the personalized tips we need so we can live our lives to the fullest. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
Share their testimonies and stories about having purchased a home. And then they'll pull equity out of that home and maybe purchase a duplex. And then they'll rent that out and start making more money, and they're taking equity out of that and they're buying a small building that has multiple units. Could you kind of bring that to life for us a little bit?
Even though you have a house, if you have equity in it, you can utilize that equity to go and do other things with it. Don't look at it as being overwhelmed. I tell the entrepreneurs, just have a partner like a realtor that knows the steps, and we'll be there to walk you through every single step of the process.
If you're watching Theology in 30 right now, you know that Justin West just dropped the mic. He shared a mouthful in that one statement. You know, look at your environment. Look at your mentors. Look at those who are constantly speaking into your life, and try to find yourself in places where those persons are making room for your voice. Ooh, I love it. So let me move to a question about Howard Thurman's homiletical theory and its implications for preachers today. You and I both know that now sermons are not 10 pages anymore. Nobody's listening to 45-minute sermons, at least not in most, in a lot, I'll say not most, but not in a lot of preaching contexts do you have 45 minutes, especially
Yep.
when we talk about virtual worship services to share a message. And we know Howard W. Thurman, some of his sermons were quite lengthy. And so we don't have that much time to preach as we did in previous times. You know, the preaching moment, Dolan Hubbard talks about it. It was the seminal moment in the worship experience, and it was okay for the sermon to run about an hour. We live in a different time. And so I want to ask you, what does Howard Thurman's method offer preachers of today who really have roughly 10 to 15 minutes to get their point across? What can they borrow from Howard Thurman's method, other than his theology, which I love how you described it, this whole communal piece and this horizontal part of living harmoniously with others. I love that. But what else? What does Thurman's method give us as preachers today?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever thought about that question, Pastor Carner, in terms of the demands of preachers to be conscious of time and making sure that they are expedient with the message that they're trying to get across. I actually think that Howard Thurman's sermons are relatively short. I mean, if you look at some of the manuscripts, most of them are only a few pages long, and I think he relatively was a short preacher in his time. But what I think he offers, I think so. I think what he offers, though, is what he pays attention to is context. So back to a topic that we covered. So he didn't want to put constraints on the sermon. What he did was centered the worship experience and said, okay, I'm not going to write a manuscript. So he was an extemporaneous preacher. I don't think he would use that word. I think he would use sensitive to the Spirit or mystic in ways, yeah. Right? He allowed the worship sermon to shape the context of what he would say. So he was very big into coordinating the music, listening to the music, and being moved by the music in relation to his observations of the congregation and their responses. And what he tried to do was find what he called a creative synthesis, right? Where the audience, the Spirit or God, and he come together in this moment, and meaning is produced. So I think what may be something that he offers is a sensitivity to the Spirit, right? So don't go into the worship service so tied to your manuscript that you don't allow freedom for the Spirit to move in ways that you could not expect. So whether that's looking into the audience's eyes and realize they are moved by something, or they don't understand something, and you may need to adjust or edit in the moment that you're in to have a more profound or powerful effect. So I think that is what in some ways has freed me. I had been very much a person that was tied to my manuscript, that would write it and would say it word for word, and was proud of the words that I used and the description that I used and the adjectives I used and all of those things, right? But then I realized there's something valuable also with not necessarily saying all those words, but having internalized it enough to allow the Spirit to guide in that moment. So that may sound a bit, risky for some. But I think that he also was so in touch with life. He was so well read. He contemplated for lengths of time what he was going to say, or at least the theme that he was going to discuss. And so when it came into the moment, a manuscript wasn't necessary. But what was necessary was the Spirit's movement in the particular worship setting with the particular group of people that were present in that moment.
I love it. So your response is perfect. And let me pause to say this. You are the resident Howard W. Thurman scholar. So if you say he was short, then I'll give it to you. I just know I have watched a couple of videos, sir, and I've had to adjust myself and stretch a little bit. But you know, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah.
I
think at times, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. There are some lengthy sermons. I think where it gets hard for some to listen to them is there is this slow process of getting into the sermon, and there's a very slow rhythm and cadence, and so it can seem like he's stretching things out. So I do understand that. The amount of words that I'm considering are not a lot of words per se. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're right, Pastor Carner. Yeah.
Listen, I am excited about your research and what you will bring to us as a Black preaching community. What your work will do for us is it will show us another way that we can communicate the gospel message and have kind of like that mystic element. I love that about Howard Thurman's preaching. He is very much so, I would consider, a mystic. And Dr. Shively T.J. Smith talks about that when she unpacks some of her work on Howard Thurman. So I'm excited about your work. This is the part of Theology in 30 that I hate. We're running out of time. So in our final few moments, I want you to share with us how we can support you and anything you'd like us to know about your work as we prepare to leave this particular topic and subject on Theology in 30. I'll give you our final words before our official sign off.
Well, I think what I will say is I don't know that a lot of preachers are considering the vocation of university preaching or campus ministry. So I might say leave room to explore that. You know, if you can sense or discern that your ministry may not be from the pulpit of a traditional Black church or a traditional church period, there are countless young adults out there who are looking for pastors in ways of receiving ministry on university and college campuses. So I invite our listeners to consider discerning a vocation in university ministry, university preaching.
Thank you so much. I know I'm excited.
Thank you.
I'm encouraged by your ministry trajectory, all that you have accomplished and all that you are accomplishing. And I know that you will do great work at Aurora. So congratulations on the opportunity. Listen, this is Theology in 30 on the Hope TV. We are the House of Hope Atlanta, where we believe that life with God is better in every way, every day. Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. is our pastor. And he says this, and I love this particular adage: if you are good to God, God will be good to you. We appreciate you watching, family. Have a wonderful and blessed week.